Oh, it's time. It's time. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It is wonderful to see your smiling faces on this gloomy day. You made the sun come out, so I really appreciate that. And it's a pleasure to see old friends and new friends, and whoever's out there in Radio Land. Hello. We'll see you soon. Um, some of you I know have followed my adventures in Greece and Rome in the early 1960s. And there will be more of that. I'm finishing up chapters on returning to the US and working as a motion picture executive in Manhattan before becoming one of the first in the cadre of young rock and roll journalists and writing for the New York Times. So that was fun. So stay tuned for that. I'll let you know when that happens. Today I wanted to read from a collection of new poems. And for those of you who know um, this area, you may enjoy them. I realize that listening to poetry is not a common pastime. It's not like the Soviet Union where they get 25,000 people to hear a poet. So what I thought was just to give you a little context for the way I think about poetry, because it might make it easier to hear it and understand it. First of all, I grew up and went to school in the mid 20th century, not 19th century. So I was particularly fond of free verse, which means they're not necessarily a rhyme scheme. There are no length of lines that are established. It's not like an Elizabethan poem, which is quite rigorous. But one of the things that I like about it is it gives you a lot of freedom. And there's something in the movies called a jump cut, when you're watching something and all of a sudden instantly you're somewhere else, like in a James Bond movie, he's in London and suddenly he's in Jamaica, better in Jamaica. So occasionally in my poems, I'll use that technique. So if all of a sudden you say, hey, where did that come from? That's what's happening. And the other thing is I like to have, if I can make it work, to have a central metaphor in the poem. So the poem, it's about something, but it's also about something else at the same time, like metaphors carry meaning across. So you may see that happen, and it's delightful. The other thing is, I'm delighted to read, but I welcome your questions or your thoughts or anything. So really, I'm very good at being interrupted. In fact, some people say I'm better when I'm interrupted. So please feel free to interrupt or clap wildly, whatever works for you. So what I'll do is start with a couple fairly simple poems, and then we'll move to more complex things, just so that you get my voice in your ear easily. This first poem is called On Morning Hill. On Morning Hill, despite the chill, the daffodils give me a thrill. The second poem is called, second poem is called Early Snowy Morning. The grass has aged overnight from luxurious green to sere and white. The clouds are gray, the wind blows cold. Tolling bells like the year ring old. Yet little sparrows lithe and quick from the grass do dry seeds pick, winging away to a tall bare branch and settle there to eat their lunch. Now, I'm sure you've all heard that there were rhyming lines, and then at the end, branch doesn't quite rhyme with lunch. And that's something called a sprung rhyme, when it sounds almost the same, but it isn't quite the same. Big favorite in the Elizabethan times. Shakespeare used it all the time. There's a poem, I don't think it's Shakespeare, that goes, "Come with me and be my love, and we will all the pleasures prove." Love, prove, sprung rhyme. They love that stuff. And it's actually a neat way to give a little emphasis without, underlining it and circling it in red. You just have a slight, okay. So here's a poem about poems. It's called Some Say. Some say a language is just a dialect with an army and a navy. If so, what makes a poem? birds speaking in words, waves sliding sibilantly toward a pebbled shore, a thought waiting silently for its own voice. No military presence is required for poetry, just another heart listening. So, one of the things when I'm walking with my puppy, um, I get in trouble if I don't bring her here, but not today. Um, we have a neighbor just to the south of us, and she has a lovely garden, and we end up going to visit her and stand in her garden and so forth. And it's just a sweet place, and it's inspiring. So very often I get little bits of moments from her garden. This is called A Lovely Ancient Name. The breeze blows the fallen leaves into a circle dancing up her driveway. Branches sway in the soft autumn light, their shadows dappling the concrete. So, what's the life of a newly single woman like these days? I inquired of a friend earlier that morning. She was long divorced and her only daughter finally away in college. Well, she said, I did just buy a recliner. For in front of the TV set? I fondly asked. I'm not sure just yet. When is it arriving? Another friend asks, who was working the reception desk next to where we were then standing. Next Wednesday. So I guess I better start figuring it out. It's going to rain next week, her friend says, checking the weather app on her phone. Our single friend has arrived at a point in history few women have ever attained: a home in suburban tranquility, economic means, and total personal freedom. She has a lovely ancient name from an age when women were essentially housebound slaves. No rights, no liberty, only duties. So, considering it further, maybe a recliner is exactly right. This is another poem about the neighborhood, but it's not about the human neighborhood, it's about the fauna. In this neck of the woods, crows are the cops. Sirens quarking from sunrise, swooping down in squadrons to chase the speeding sparrows, drive off nest marauding hawks, escort the gluttonous squirrels away from the pendant bird feeders. Having led their flock through a call and response daybreak, they settle down on a rooftop for gossip, donuts, and coffee. The avian community here are early risers, up with the bugs, calling to one another from branches above, the early dog walkers and their sniffing beasts, kids with backpacks sunk into the screens, awaiting the school bus's blinking arrival, unaware of their feathered neighbors who are noisily scarfing threads, fluff, and wires to build nests, then scouring the environs for bugs and seeds to feed the squawking nestlings. By afternoon, the cul-de-sac is pretty much in shape, and as shadows grow long, things quiet down. Wings by their sides, songsters grow calm and enjoy the cicadas' early jazz. Later, a few stars pierce an inky sky and sail among dark branches. Here, there's no sleeping all the night with open eye. Heads folded beneath wings, they now choose rest and calm before the rising of a new day. That sleeping all the night with open eye is from the introduction to Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. And he's all excited about, it's March and the rains are coming and things are blooming and the birds are busy making new birds. That's sleeping all the night with open eye, supposedly a naughty reference. So the next set of poems are memories from boyhood. And the first one has to do with Well, actually, it explains what it has to do with. So it's called How Could They? Clumps of morning muesli poke up through the milky surface like mountain tops through clouds as painted on ancient Chinese scrolls. The merest breath of wind stirs the morning branches. Here, summer air is heavy, moist, through which, I've learned, scents can carry for miles. Not that we'd know, as olfactory sensation drains from us as we sculpt our industrial world. In ways unthinking, we blind the stars with light, litter the ocean with trash and sound, circle the planet with orbiting such detritus that it will block an escape by rocket, though no habitable rescue rock has yet been prepared for us Earthlings. As a boy at an auto show, I was bewitched by a video. A giant jungle snake encircling a lion, crushing its breath, constricting the life out of it. A beautiful lion. How could the filmmakers just stand and watch it perish? So, although I was born in New York City, I grew up in Washington, D.C., and we lived on the far west side of the city, just up near where the Potomac River was, and also where the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal was. Um, and it was a great spring, summer, and autumn playground for us because we could go down and rent canoes and walk the towpath, and it was terrific. I don't know if you've ever been to Washington, but it's such a pretty place. It starts in Georgetown, and I guess it went up to Albany or someplace, but we never took it that far. So this poem is called Along the Canal. I remember turtles perched on dark sunlit rocks, on logs half sunk in water, shells of black and yellow squares, their long green necks extended, sentient, still in the sunlight. Were they aware of the soft breeze, or the songbirds hopping among branches, or the drifting clouds overhead? Our canoe bumped gently against one bank of the waterway, once a mule-drawn inland thoroughfare for transport and travel north until the rattle of the trains. Surveyed by a young George Washington in the decades before he championed our raucous revolution. Stillness now reigns among the trees, as mirrored in the facing woods on the far Virginia shore, absorbing the footsteps of hikers, the gentle splash of paddles, the sudden plop of turtles, meditation interrupted, leaping into the murky shallows. Pairs of lovers, hidden from the path, doze on open blankets, crumpled, fragrant. Across the broad, rocky floodplain, the Potomac surges southward toward the raucous halls of government. White, gleaming, scattered marble buildings along the mall, like huge, smooth boulders from the last ice age. This morning, as she was leaving, I made her smile. No recollection of what I said, only her warm laugh, tousled hair, and steady stride on the way to the business of her day. Once again, quiet returns, leaving only the gentle puff of pages turning, like the dip of paddles in a slow-moving stream. That was one of those jump cuts. I probably got that. So this is a poem about my father, basically. And we went to, when I was a kid, we would go for Easters and Thanksgivings to this wonderful inn in Virginia. And it's one of those wonderful memories from childhood. I hope you each have them where, you know, there was some summer thing that you did as a regular thing, and it was like, so great. So anyway, This poem is called His Favorite Car. My father's favorite car ever was a Ford Fairlane 500. He called it his hill topper, surfing the inclines with a smooth purr on holiday trips from the nation's capital to Warm Springs in the low Virginia mountains. The inn where we languidly dined, owned by a French couple, had once been a county courthouse. Our sleeping quarters, just up the hill, were in the converted jailhouse. To the amusement of the adults and amazement of us kids, the inmates' carvings on the wooden cell doors, leaning now against the dusty porch wall, left nothing to the imagination. Dad's only complaint were the serpentine mountainside roads with their unrelenting twists and repetitive turns. So, one Sunday morning on a quiet drive to town, he simply carved a straight line through the snaking S's of the yellow center stripe until a police cruiser, siren singing, requested we pull over, suspecting inebriation even at that soft Sunday hour. Yikes. Anyway, I seem to have lost that second part. Um, anyway, what happens is, so poor guy, he has to get out of the car. Has to walk a straight line. He walks a straight line, but guess where he left his wallet? On the desk in the jailhouse because it was a vacation. He wasn't even thinking about putting it in his pocket. Poor guy. Um, so what happened? I mean, my father, and this is in the poem. My father was a very renowned pediatrician in Washington, and he, in the course of his life, he's made so many house calls on snowy roads to distressed parents and their children, and he was quite a good guy. But in this, fortunately, we were traveling with some very nice friends who knew how to talk to these troopers in their starched uniforms. They were all, one was 11 and one was 13. I mean, they were really young, but it all worked out fine. And so you can imagine Dad sitting in the back seat, driving home as we went around the curves, and he's swaying back and forth. That's how that poem ends. Sorry about that. Um, so when I was in college, we had to take physical ed our freshman year. So the fall season, I got my senior life-saving badge. And in the spring season, because it was right on the River Charles, I decided to do rowing. And so this is a poem about that. It's called Early on the Charles. River and sky exchange the same dark gray. An eager air nips my fingers at the oars. The bridge's vaulting concrete over my head, as with their complement, the bridge's vaulting concrete underdeck glides over my head. As with their complement of sleep-deprived cars, the shore's highways slide past on either side. Slowly, muscles warm, falling into familiar rhythm. Dip, pull, feather, return. Dip, pull, feather, return. Awakening, the cox in my brain takes the baton, and we're off in style. Soon enough, there will be time for pancakes, bacon, coffee, before study in the tall calm of the long reading room, then a late morning class. But for now, it's take your seat, pull your oar. Okay, so there's a lot going on now in poetry that seems to me to have nothing to do with poetry. It's all about what the words look like on the page. And that's fine. And my daughter, who is a really good poet, I learned most of what I know from her. Um, she says, have an open mind. It's kind of cool what they're doing, how they arrange the words. It sort of shakes your way of understanding up. So this poem, Oblivion, just grew. I didn't set out to make it a graphical poem, but here it is, a graphical poem. And the idea is that, well, I'll read it and then I'll tell you what the basic notion was here behind it. Oblivion grows irresistibly, vines climbing the trunk of a once upon a time present moment or event, which its fog of days now blurs. Its leaves, unstoppably twining, turn what was once a branched, defined, statuesque forest denizen into a vast, indistinguishable green tent. Like the insect world, oblivion, forgetfulness, carries away all the trash from the past, letting light reach the forest floor where saplings capture their time of growth in the sun. Among the climbing vines, the chill of cancellation lingers. In our defense, we strive for fame's time-defying forever youngness. But how long will that honor last? But a classic endures, and if you return to it, it reveals itself as a new being. Around it glows light that has you reading far into the night. So the point here was that the way the vines cover the trees and obliterate them, time passing can do the same for us. So that's the point of this song. This poem has another kind of graphical trick, but I'm going to read it first and then talk about it. It's called You Must. You must accept it, even if you tremble. Look at the data points, time passing, body losing its grip. Though it's right there in front of you, you simply don't see it. Memories return only as mist. She floats in your heart. Your heart beats wildly, searching for her name. The room spins around you. Why did you walk in here? Why did you walk in here? The room spins around you. Searching for her name, your heart beats wildly. She floats in your heart. Memories return only as mist. You simply don't see it, though it's right there in front of you. Time is passing, body losing its grip. Look at the data points. Even if you tremble, you must accept it. So you can see what happens is that there are 6 stanzas and then they repeat, but backwards. It's like watching a movie played forwards and backwards. I learned this from a poet a few weeks ago who was, I should remember her name, but I don't. She was the poet laureate for a year or two. And there's something called, from poetry.org, you can get a new poem every morning. I can't say that every morning the poems are particularly wonderful, but every once in a while you get something really amazing. So I read her poem that does that same technique, and I thought, could I do one like that? Let me give it a whirl. So that's what inspired me. So this is a poem that just popped into my head because of the sound of the title. I was working with little Chloe, and it's nice to walk with your dog in the woods in Hope Valley because the trees are lovely and the people are very nice. And I just like the sound of these words, the last eligible angel. So that was in my head, and I said, "Oh, well, where is that going?" And it very often happens, it tells me more than I tell it. Once you've written something down, then you have to work on it and think about it. But at first, sometimes the inspiration, I'm just lucky, I guess. The last eligible angel. The last eligible angel withdrew last night. No reason was given for her departure, only a note of farewell for her close ones, imploring silence. Lock the doors, burn my writings, cancel our meetings. Only your memories record our precious time. She is gone, not from sadness, but futility. Are we now lost without angelic wings to shield us? Have we taken a step too far, too often, too carelessly, and tipped the balance beyond returning, ignoring solutions that wait, unfound, hidden, and now too late for redressing? We find ourselves in this time and place of magic. How did all this ever come to be? Miracles abound like a sky full of snow, which now falls trampled, melting, and ignored. Still, some hearts stir, and she can't help but hear them. If we are brave, she will return, and others too. The sun still sends its light, waiting. Well, my last poem, and thank you so much for being here. I really enjoy this. Um, this poem closes, it doesn't really need an explanation, and it's called No Explanation. Life's elemental music hums such tiny tunes that we, mammoth sweetwalkers, are deaf to its melodies. Rather, like haunted Hamlet, we wander, digging ourselves ever deeper into tragedy. And yet, some do cross the pond of time, lily pad after lily pad, to a deft and calm arrival on that shore whose mystery we locate above us or below us, or where we can only imagine. Even those imaginations are sweetly childlike, with their propositions of the heavenly whereabouts, angels floating on clouds. For some lucky few, however, other vistas do prevail, graceful, even moving, inspired by silent existential messages like those in music that resonate with an intimation different from all others, offering no explanation, just the deep tolling of ancient bells in the misty distance of endless time. Thank you.